The transport ship hummed as it dropped out of hyperspace near Nexus Prime. Through the viewing port, Yuna Kim pressed her face against the cool metal and stared at the massive space station floating in the void. The Interstellar Military Academy was bigger than any city she had ever seen on Earth. Its silver towers stretched in all directions, connected by bridges that sparkled with energy fields. Yuna adjusted the strap of her worn canvas bag. Inside were the pieces of her rifle, carefully wrapped in old cloth. The bag had been with her through 3 different wars on Earth. Now it would follow her to the stars. The other passengers on the transport were already gathering their belongings. Most of them were not human. Tall reptilian beings with scales that shimmered green and gold stood near the front of the cabin. Their yellow eyes looked at everything with cold intelligence. Behind them, insect-like creatures clicked and chittered in their strange language. Their forearms moved independently as they organized their equipment with mechanical precision. Near the back of the transport, floating beings made of pure energy drifted in containment suits. They did not speak, but communicated through flashes of light that hurt to look at directly. Yuna had learned these were called ethereals during the journey from Earth. She was one of only 3 humans aboard the transport. The other 2 sat together near the middle of the cabin. Jun Park was tall and thin with nervous energy. He kept checking and rechecking his electronic tablet that contained his academy assignment. Minho Lee was broader and more confident. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 6 years before applying to the academy. When the transport docked, all the passengers filed out into the station. The scale of the place hit Yuna immediately. The ceiling of the main hall was so high she could barely see it. Beings from dozens of different species walked through the corridors. Some had wings, others had tentacles, and some looked like walking rocks. A mechanical voice echoed through the hall. All new cadets report to Orientation Hall 7. All new cadets report to Orientation Hall 7. Yuna followed the crowd through corridors lined with displays showing famous battles from galactic history. The Battle of Kepler's Edge, where the reptilian Draknari had held off an invasion for 6 months. The Siege of the Crystal Nebula, where Vex engineers had built weapons from asteroid debris. The liberation of Andros Prime, where ethereal forces had turned enemy ships against each other. There were no human battles displayed. Earth had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago. Humans were still considered a primitive species that had barely learned to travel between stars. Orientation Hall 7 was enormous. Hundreds of cadets filled the tiered seating. Yuna found a spot near the back and sat down carefully. Her bag made a soft clinking sound as she set it beside her feet. A nearby Draknari cadet turned and looked at her with curiosity. "What is in the primitive container, mammal?" the reptilian being asked. His voice was deep and hissing. "Personal equipment," Yuna replied quietly. The Draknari's forked tongue flicked out to taste the air. "It smells of metal and chemical residue. Crude materials." He turned back to face the front with obvious dismissal. At the front of the hall, a large display screen activated. The image showed a being that looked like it was part machine and part insect. Its compound eyes were replaced with optical sensors, and its natural arms had been replaced with mechanical appendages. This was Instructor Talon Vex according to the text that appeared below his image. "Welcome to the Interstellar Military Academy." Talon's voice boomed through the hall's sound system. "You represent 60 of the most promising military candidates from 12 different species across the galaxy. Over the next standard year, you will be trained in advanced warfare techniques, tactical analysis, and leadership skills." The screen changed to show images of previous graduating classes. Yuna noticed that most of the graduates were from the major galactic species. Very few looked like newer members of the galactic community. "Your training will culminate in a series of final examinations," Talon continued. "The most important of these will be the precision shooting competition. This test will determine your final class ranking and your assignment after graduation. Those who score highest will be placed in elite units of the Galactic Defense Force. Those who score poorly will be assigned to logistics and support roles." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Everyone understood the importance of this competition. Elite military units were the path to advancement and respect in galactic society. "You will be provided with standard Galactic Defense Force pulse rifles for customization and training," Talon said. The screen showed images of sleek, advanced weapons covered in electronic components. "These rifles represent the finest military technology available. They can be enhanced with quantum targeting systems, gravitational compensators, energy dampeners, and neural interface links. Around Yuna, the other cadets leaned forward with excitement. She heard whispered conversations about which modifications would be most effective. The Draknari discussed energy output ratios. The Vex debated optimal targeting algorithms. The Ethereals communicated in quick flashes about electromagnetic field manipulation. Yuna remained quiet. She had used many different weapons during her time in Earth's military conflicts. Some had been high-tech equipment provided by off-world allies. Others had been simple tools built from basic materials. In her experience, the most important factor was not the weapon itself, but the person using it. Classes begin tomorrow at 0600 Standard Time, Talon announced. Dormitory assignments are being transmitted to your personal devices now. Cadets are expected to maintain peak physical condition and demonstrate absolute dedication to their training. The galaxy's security depends on the soldiers we train here. As the orientation ended, cadets began filing out of the hall. Yuna stood and shouldered her bag. The Draknari who had spoken to her earlier was now talking to a group of his species mates. "Did you see the humans?" one of them was saying. "3 of them in our class. I wonder why the Academy accepted such a primitive species. Perhaps for diversity," another replied with a sound that might have been laughter, or maybe as an experiment to see how far behind they truly are. June and Minho approached Yuna as she walked toward the exit. "That was intimidating," June said, adjusting his glasses. "Did you see the technology they were talking about? Neural interface links? I have never even heard of some of those modifications." "We will figure it out," Minho said confidently. "Humans have always been good at adapting to new situations." Yuna nodded but did not say much. She was thinking about the competition that would determine their futures. Around them, alien cadets were already planning their rifle modifications and discussing advanced targeting theories. None of them knew that Yuna had spent 8 years as a sniper in Earth's military. None of them knew about the wars she had fought in places where high technology failed, and only basic skills kept soldiers alive. None of them knew that inside her worn canvas bag were the components of a weapons system that had been perfected through centuries of human conflict. As they walked through the corridors toward the dormitories, Yuna looked at the displays of famous galactic battles one more time. Soon, she thought, there might be human battles worth displaying. But first, she had to show the galaxy what humans could do with the tools they were given. 3 weeks had passed since orientation day. The Academy's training schedule was brutal, but Yuna had adapted quickly. Physical conditioning in the morning, tactical studies in the afternoon, and weapons theory in the evening. She had performed well in all areas, though quietly and without drawing much attention to herself. The alien cadets had formed their own groups based on species. The Draknari trained together in the combat halls, their movements precise and aggressive. The Vex worked as a team on engineering problems, their 4 arms allowing them to manipulate multiple tools simultaneously. The Ethereals practiced energy manipulation exercises that filled entire rooms with brilliant light shows. The 3 humans had begun training together by necessity. They were often paired up for exercises because none of the alien cadets wanted to work with the primitive newcomers. Yuna did not mind this arrangement. She had always preferred working with people she trusted. Today was different, though. Today was assembly day. The weapons laboratory occupied an entire level of the Academy. Yuna walked through the entrance and was amazed by what she saw. Hundreds of workstations were arranged in neat rows. Each station had a standard Galactic Defense Force pulse rifle waiting to be customized, along with boxes of modification components. The rifles were beautiful in their own way. The metal was polished to a mirror finish and covered with connection ports for electronic attachments. The basic design was elegant and functional, clearly built by beings who understood the fundamentals of projectile weapons. Instructor Talon stood at the front of the laboratory. His mechanical arms moved with fluid precision as he demonstrated the various modifications available to the cadets. "Today you will customize your competition rifles," Talon announced. "Each modification serves a specific purpose. The quantum targeting scope eliminates parallax error and provides target acquisition at distances up to 50 kilometers. The IA gravitational compensator adjusts projectile trajectory in variable gravity fields. The energy dampener reduces muzzle flash and heat signature to nearly 0. Around the laboratory, cadets moved to their assigned workstations. Yuna found hers near the middle of the room. June and Minho were at stations nearby. She could hear their excited conversation about which modifications to install. "I am definitely using the neural interface," June was saying as he examined a small device that looked like it would plug directly into the user's skull. "Direct thought-to-weapon communication will give me the fastest reaction time." "The gravitational compensator seems more practical," Minho replied. He was studying a complex mechanism covered in sensors and adjustment dials. "We will be shooting in different environments. This will automatically adjust for local conditions." At the workstation next to Yuna, a Draknari cadet named Sector was already installing multiple modifications. His scaled hands moved quickly and efficiently as he attached a quantum scope to his rifle. The scope was nearly as large as the rifle itself, covered in displays and adjustment knobs. "Observe, mammal," Sector hissed at Yuna without looking up from his work. "This is how advanced species approach warfare. Each component enhances natural ability beyond biological limitations." Yuna nodded politely but did not respond. She was examining her own rifle carefully, running her hands along the barrel and testing the weight distribution. The weapon was well made, but it felt foreign in her hands. Too light in some places, too heavy in others. She opened her canvas bag and began removing her own equipment. The other cadets around her stopped their work to watch. What emerged from the worn bag looked primitive compared to the gleaming modifications they were installing. Yuna had strips of cloth that were stained with oil and dirt. She had small metal tools that looked handmade rather than manufactured. She had pieces of padding that appeared to be cut from old uniforms. Most puzzling of all, she began removing components from the standard rifle rather than adding new ones. "What are you doing?" asked Zixnil, a Vex cadet whose compound eyes focused on Yuna's work with mechanical precision. "You are making the weapon less capable, not more capable." Yuna carefully removed the electronic sight from her rifle and set it aside. "Sometimes less is more," she said quietly. This comment caused several nearby cadets to click and hiss with what sounded like laughter. Sector looked up from his quantum scope installation with obvious amusement. "Perhaps the human does not understand the technology," he suggested to the other cadets. "Their species only recently achieved spaceflight. These modifications may be beyond their comprehension." More laughter rippled through the nearby workstations. Even some cadets from other species looked over to see what was causing the commotion. Yuna ignored the attention and continued her work. She began wrapping sections of her rifle barrel with the stained cloth strips. The material looked like it had been used many times before. As she wound the cloth around the metal, she pulled it tight and secured it with small knots that seemed random, but were clearly practiced movements. "Why are you covering the barrel?" June asked nervously. He had been watching Yuna's modifications with growing concern. "The thermal regulation system will not work properly if you block the cooling vents." "The cloth will handle thermal regulation," Yuna replied as she continued wrapping. Minho shook his head in embarrassment. The human cadets were already struggling to gain respect from their alien classmates. Yuna's bizarre modifications were making them all look foolish. "You should use the proper equipment," Minho whispered to her. "We represent our entire species here. People will judge all humans based on what we do." Yuna paused in her work and looked at both of her fellow humans. "I know what I am doing," she said simply, then returned to her modifications. She adjusted the rifle stock to an unusual angle that looked uncomfortable to observers. The standard position would have been straight and perpendicular to the barrel, but Yuna canted it at an angle that seemed wrong. She removed padding from some areas and added her own padding to others. The quantum scopes and gravitational compensators around her hummed with electronic activity. Display screens showed targeting information and environmental data in multiple alien languages. Neural interface links glowed as they synchronized with their users' brain patterns. Yuna's rifle remained silent. It looked like something that belonged in a museum rather than a high-tech military academy. The cloth wrapping made it appear crude and primitive. The modified stock looked uncomfortable and impractical. "I do not understand human logic," announced Veltar, an ethereal cadet whose energy form flickered with what might have been confusion. They possess inferior technology on their home world, yet they refuse to utilize superior galactic technology when it is freely provided. Perhaps this is why their species required rescue from planetary conflicts, Sector suggested. They lack the intellectual capacity to recognize improvement when they encounter it. The other cadets agreed with various sounds and gestures of approval. Humans were clearly a primitive species that would need significant guidance to function in galactic society. The evidence was right in front of them. Yuna tested her rifle's weight distribution one final time. The balance felt right in her hands now. The cloth wrapping would prevent thermal distortion of the barrel during extended firing. The modified stock would allow her to maintain a natural breathing pattern while aiming. The removed electronics eliminated potential points of failure. Around her, 60 other cadets were installing the most advanced military technology the galaxy had to offer. Their weapons were marvels of engineering that could perform calculations and adjustments no biological mind could match. But Yuna had turned her rifle into something else entirely, something that looked broken to observers but felt perfect in her hands. Something that her instructors on Earth would have recognized immediately, even if her galactic classmates could not. She was ready for the competition. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for what she could do with a weapon built for human hands. The practice sessions began the day after assembly. Every morning for 2 hours, the cadets would take their customized rifles to the shooting ranges scattered throughout the academy. The ranges were designed to simulate different combat environments from across the galaxy. Yuna arrived at Range 7 early, before most of the other cadets. She liked the quiet time to familiarize herself with the facility. The range stretched for over a kilometer, with targets at various distances and elevations. Environmental controls could simulate different atmospheric conditions, gravity levels, and weather patterns. She set up at firing position 12 and began her routine. First, she checked the rifle completely. Every component had to be examined and tested. The cloth wrapping was secure. The modified stock fit properly against her shoulder. The iron sights were aligned correctly. Other cadets began arriving and taking positions along the firing line. Their high-tech rifles hummed and beeped as electronic systems activated and ran diagnostic checks. Display screens lit up with targeting information and environmental data. "Begin practice session," announced the automated range control system. Targets appeared at various distances, moving in complex patterns. The sound of weapons fire filled the range. The alien cadets' pulse rifles made sharp crackling sounds as they discharged energy projectiles. Electronic systems automatically adjusted for wind, gravity, and target movement. Scores appeared on overhead displays showing hit percentages and accuracy ratings. Sector was performing exceptionally well. His quantum targeting scope tracked moving targets with mechanical precision. The gravitational compensator in his rifle automatically adjusted for the range's variable gravity fields. His first 10 shots scored 9 direct hits. "Observe the difference between advanced technology and primitive methods," he announced loudly enough for nearby cadets to hear. He gestured toward Yuna's position with one clawed hand. Yuna had fired 6 shots so far. 3 had hit their targets cleanly, but 2 had missed completely and 1 had only grazed the edge of a stationary target. Her rifle made a different sound when it fired, more like a mechanical snap than the smooth energy discharge of the other weapons. "The human weapon appears to be malfunctioning," observed Zixnil. His forearms moved independently as he adjusted multiple systems on his own rifle. "Perhaps the primitive modifications have damaged the firing mechanism." More cadets were paying attention now. Veltar drifted closer in his containment suit, his energy form flickering with what appeared to be curiosity. Even cadets from the far end of the range were looking in Yuna's direction. "Maybe she needs help understanding the equipment," suggested another Draknari cadet. "Their species is still learning to use galactic technology." Yuna ignored the comments and continued practicing. She made small adjustments to her rifle between shots, tightening the cloth wrapping slightly and checking the stock position. Each modification was tiny, almost invisible to observers, but purposeful. June was practicing at position 8, 4 stations away from Yuna. His neural interface was working perfectly, allowing him to target and fire almost as quickly as he could think. His scores were improving steadily as he learned to trust the electronic systems. "Yuna," he called during a break in the firing, "why don't you try the targeting assistance? It really does help with accuracy." "I prefer to do it myself," Yuna replied, not looking up from her rifle maintenance. But look at the scores, June insisted. He pointed to the overhead display where rankings were shown in real time. Yuna was currently in 47th place out of 60 cadets. You're making all of us humans look bad. Minho nodded in agreement from position 10. His gravitational compensator had helped him achieve consistently good results, even though he was not at the top of the rankings. The other species already think we're primitive. We need to show them we can use advanced technology as well as they can. This conversation was happening during a break period, but the acoustics of the range meant other cadets could hear every word. Some of them had stopped their own practice to listen. The humans are arguing among themselves, Sector observed with obvious amusement. Perhaps they cannot agree on which primitive method to use. Or maybe they are finally realizing their limitations, added Veltar. His energy form pulsed with what looked like condescending satisfaction. The practice session resumed, and the mockery continued. Every time Yuna missed a shot or scored lower than the high-tech rifles around her, the alien cadets exchanged knowing looks and whispered comments. Their weapons were performing flawlessly, automatically compensating for every environmental variable and tracking targets with computer precision. After 2 hours, the session ended and scores were tallied. Sector had achieved the highest accuracy rating of the day. Veltar was second, followed by several other alien cadets whose names Yuna did not recognize. The humans were clustered in the middle and lower portions of the rankings. Tomorrow we practice in low-gravity simulation, announced the range control system. Cadets should adjust their equipment accordingly. As the cadets filed out of the range, Yuna overheard more conversations about human limitations and primitive technology. Some of the aliens were beginning to wonder if humans should even be allowed to compete in the final examination. Their species is clearly not ready for advanced military training, one Vex cadet was saying to his companion. Perhaps they should be assigned to support roles immediately without wasting time on combat training. I agree, replied another voice. The final competition will be embarrassing for them. It would be more merciful to eliminate them from consideration now. Yuna packed her rifle carefully in its worn case and slung the canvas bag over her shoulder. She had heard similar comments before. During her early days in Earth's military, instructors and fellow soldiers who had assumed a quiet woman could not be an effective fighter. She had proven them wrong then, and she would prove these alien cadets wrong now. But first she needed to understand their technology better and figure out how to use their assumptions against them. The next few weeks would be crucial. The final competition was approaching, and she needed to be ready for whatever challenges the Academy would present. Her rifle was performing exactly as she intended, but the alien cadets did not understand what they were seeing. Soon, she thought, they would learn the difference between depending on technology and mastering the fundamentals of marksmanship. The question was whether they would learn before or during the competition that would determine everyone's future. As she walked through the corridors back to the dormitory, Yuna was already planning her strategy for the low-gravity practice session tomorrow. She would need to make different adjustments to her rifle, but the principles would remain the same. Technology could enhance a shooter's capabilities, but it could not replace the skills that came from years of training and experience. And Yuna had both in abundance, even if her alien classmates could not recognize it yet. 6 weeks into the training program, the practice sessions had become routine. Every morning brought the same pattern of events. Alien cadets would arrive with their high-tech rifles, dominate the shooting scores, and make increasingly bold comments about human inadequacy. Yuna had learned to tune out most of the mockery, but it was affecting June and Minho differently. June had become obsessed with improving his technological modifications, adding new components almost daily. Minho had grown quiet and withdrawn, spending most of his free time studying alien military theory instead of practicing with his rifle. Instructor Talon had been watching all of this unfold from his observation position overlooking the ranges. As a veteran of countless battles across the galaxy, he had developed the ability to see details that others missed. While the other cadets focused on scores and rankings, Talon watched technique and methodology. Today's practice session was taking place on Range 3, which simulated the harsh conditions found on frontier worlds. Variable wind patterns, shifting gravity fields, and electromagnetic interference that disrupted electronic systems at random intervals. The alien cadets were adapting to the conditions with typical efficiency. When their quantum scopes flickered from electromagnetic interference, they adjusted their targeting algorithms. When gravity fields shifted, their compensators recalibrated automatically. Their rifles were marvels of engineering that could handle almost any environmental challenge. Yuna was practicing at her usual position near the middle of the range. Her rifle looked the same as always, wrapped in stained cloth and modified in ways that appeared crude to casual observers. She was shooting methodically, taking her time between shots while the electronic rifles around her fired in rapid succession. During a break in the session, Talon descended from his observation platform and began walking along the firing line. The cadets straightened to attention as he approached, but he waved them back to their practice routines. He stopped at various positions to examine rifles and offer suggestions. The Draknari cadets showed him their latest targeting improvements. The Vex demonstrated their engineering modifications. The Ethereals displayed their energy manipulation enhancements. All the while, Talon was making his way toward position 12 where Yuna was practicing. She did not notice his approach until he was standing directly behind her, watching as she prepared for her next shot. "Continue," Talon said quietly when she started to turn around. "I am observing, not interrupting." Yuna settled back into her shooting position and aimed at a target 600 meters downrange. The wind was gusting unpredictably, and the electromagnetic interference had just disabled 3 electronic scopes belonging to nearby cadets. She fired once. The projectile struck the target dead center. Talon's compound eyes focused on her rifle with sudden intensity. He had noticed something that the other cadets had missed completely. "May I examine your weapon?" he asked during the next break period. Yuna nodded and handed him the rifle carefully. Around them, conversation stopped as other cadets realized that the instructor was personally inspecting the human's primitive equipment. Talon ran his mechanical fingers along the cloth wrapping around the barrel. "Thermal regulation," he murmured to himself, "prevents heat distortion during extended firing sequences." The nearby cadets leaned closer to hear what he was saying. Sector and Veltar exchanged confused glances. Talon examined the modified stock next. "Adjusted for natural breathing rhythm," he continued, his voice barely audible, "allows the shooter to maintain consistent form without fighting the weapon's balance." He moved to the iron sights that Yuna had kept instead of installing electronic optics. "Positioned for ambient light compensation without electronic enhancement. No power requirements, no failure points, no electromagnetic interference vulnerability." The instructor's attention shifted to the trigger mechanism. "Modified for controlled breathing technique. Allows for smoother projectile release during the natural respiratory pause." Finally, he examined the bipod legs that Yuna had shortened. "Adapted for unstable terrain. Standard length would be ineffective on surfaces that are not perfectly level." Talon straightened and looked directly at Yuna. The entire range had gone silent now. Even cadets at the far end had stopped practicing to watch this unprecedented interaction. "Only a sniper would know that," he said clearly, his voice carrying across the range in the sudden quiet. The words hit the assembled cadets like a physical blow. Sector's scaled face showed confusion and something that might have been alarm. Zixnil's compound eyes focused and refocused as if trying to process unexpected information. Veltar's energy form flickered erratically inside his containment suit. "Sniper?" June asked from his position 4 stations away. He had never heard Yuna mention specialized training. Minho was staring at Yuna with a new expression. "You never said you were a sniper." Yuna accepted her rifle back from Talon without changing expression. "You never asked," she replied simply. The implications were spreading through the group of cadets like a shockwave. A sniper meant someone with specialized training in precision shooting. It meant years of experience in actual combat conditions. It meant skills that could not be replicated by technology alone. "What does this mean?" Sector demanded, his voice losing some of its usual condescending tone. "Human snipers are not documented in galactic military databases." Talon turned to address the entire group. "Human military history is extensive but not well known outside their home system," he explained. "Their species has been engaged in warfare for thousands of years before achieving spaceflight. They developed specialized roles and training methods that have no equivalent in other galactic militaries." "But surely our technology is superior," Veltar protested. "Quantum targeting systems and gravitational compensators provide capabilities that no biological entity can match." Technology can enhance existing skills, Talon agreed, but it cannot replace fundamental expertise. A sniper is not just someone who shoots accurately at long range. A sniper is someone who has mastered the art of invisible warfare. They can survive in hostile territory for weeks, eliminate high-value targets without detection, and escape without being tracked. The alien cadets were processing this information with visible difficulty. Their entire understanding of human military capabilities had been built on assumptions about technological inferiority. The idea that humans might possess specialized knowledge that advanced galactic species lacked was almost incomprehensible. How many confirmed eliminations? Talon asked Una directly. 237, she replied without hesitation. The number settled over the range like a cold wind. 237 successful kills meant years of active combat duty. It meant someone who had survived multiple deployments in hostile territory. It meant a level of practical experience that none of the other cadets could match. June was looking at Una with something approaching awe. You killed 237 enemy combatants? I completed 237 successful missions, Una corrected. Sometimes there were multiple targets. Sector made a sound that was half hiss, half growl. His understanding of the situation was changing rapidly, and he did not like the implications. This changes nothing, he declared, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Modern warfare is about technology and coordination, not primitive hunting skills. Perhaps, Talon said mildly. We will discover the answer during the final competition. He returned to his observation platform, leaving the cadets to resume their practice session. But the atmosphere on the range had changed completely. The casual mockery had disappeared, replaced by uncertainty and nervous glances. Una continued her methodical practice routine, but now the other cadets were watching her technique with new eyes. Every shot she fired was being analyzed and discussed. Every modification to her rifle was being examined for hidden purpose. The balance of power on range 3 had shifted in a single conversation. The alien cadets were beginning to realize that they might have seriously underestimated their human classmates. And the final competition was only 2 weeks away. The day of the final competition arrived with an announcement that sent nervous energy through the academy. The test would not take place on the familiar practice ranges. Instead, all cadets were to report to Simulation Bay Alpha, the academy's most advanced training facility. Una packed her rifle with the same careful routine she had followed for 8 weeks. Every component was checked and secured. The cloth wrapping was tight and properly positioned. Her canvas bag showed even more wear now, but everything inside was in perfect condition. The other human cadets were noticeably tense as they prepared their equipment. June had added 3 more electronic modifications to his rifle in the past 2 weeks, trying to match the performance levels of the alien cadets. Minho had been studying constantly, memorizing technical specifications and performance data. Do you think they will change the rules because of what Talon said about snipers? June asked as they walked toward the simulation bay. The rules are the rules, Una replied calmly. We adapt to whatever conditions they present. Simulation Bay Alpha was enormous, larger than any of the practice ranges. The space could be reconfigured to replicate almost any environment found in the galaxy. Environmental controls could adjust gravity, atmospheric composition, electromagnetic fields, and weather patterns with complete accuracy. All 60 cadets assembled in the staging area, while Instructor Talon explained the competition format. His mechanical voice echoed through the bay as he outlined the challenge that would determine their final rankings. The test will consist of precision shooting in a hostile environment simulation, Talon announced. You will face variable gravity conditions, extreme weather patterns, and electromagnetic interference that changes every 30 minutes. Targets will appear at random distances and remain visible for limited time periods. The alien cadets exchanged confident glances. Their rifles were designed to handle exactly these kinds of challenging conditions. Automatic systems would compensate for environmental variables without requiring conscious thought from the shooters. Additionally, Talon continued, the simulation will include atmospheric conditions found on Frontier World Designation Kappa 7. Low oxygen content, high atmospheric pressure, and chemical compositions that interfere with most electronic systems. This announcement caused more concern among the cadets. Kappa 7 was known throughout the galaxy as one of the most hostile environments where military operations had ever been conducted. Several alien species had attempted to establish bases there, but most had failed due to equipment failures caused by the harsh conditions. You will have 4 hours to complete the course, Talon concluded. Your scores will be based on accuracy, consistency, and adaptability to changing conditions. Begin when ready. The simulation bay transformed around them. The familiar metal walls disappeared, replaced by a rocky landscape under an alien sky. The air became thick and difficult to breathe. Gravity fluctuated between standard levels and nearly twice normal strength. Most importantly, electromagnetic interference began immediately. Electronic systems throughout the bay started flickering and displaying error messages. The advanced rifles that had performed so well during practice sessions were suddenly unreliable. Sector raised his rifle and activated his quantum targeting scope. The display flickered once, showed targeting data for 3 seconds, then went completely dark. He tried restarting the system, but the interference was too strong. My gravitational compensator is not responding, announced Zixnil from nearby. His forearms moved frantically over his rifle's control systems, but nothing seemed to work properly. All around the simulation bay, similar problems were developing. Neural interface links were losing connection with their users. Energy dampeners were shutting down randomly. Even basic electronic sites were failing as the hostile environment overwhelmed their circuits. Veltar's energy form was flickering more erratically than usual inside his containment suit. The atmospheric conditions are interfering with my species' natural electromagnetic abilities, he reported with obvious distress. I cannot maintain proper targeting coordination, but Yuna's rifle was working exactly as designed. The cloth wrapping around the barrel was protecting the metal from corrosive atmospheric chemicals. The modified stock allowed her to maintain steady aim despite the fluctuating gravity. The iron sights remained perfectly aligned regardless of electromagnetic interference. She found her first target at 800 meters and fired. Direct hit. The next target appeared at a different elevation, partially concealed behind simulated rock formations. Yuna adjusted her position, compensated for wind and gravity, and fired again. Another direct hit. Around her, the alien cadets were struggling with equipment failures and environmental challenges. Rifles that had performed flawlessly in controlled conditions were now unreliable and unpredictable. Electronic systems that had automatically handled environmental compensation were failing when they were needed most. June was having particular difficulty. His neural interface had disconnected within the first 10 minutes, leaving him trying to operate a rifle that was designed around electronic assistance. Without the automated systems, he was struggling to hit targets that would have been simple during practice sessions. My rifle is not responding correctly, he called to Yuna during a break between target presentations. All the electronic modifications are failing. Use the manual controls, Yuna suggested. Trust your training, not the technology. But June had become dependent on electronic assistance over the past 2 months. Without automated targeting and environmental compensation, he was having to relearn basic shooting techniques under the worst possible conditions. Minho was adapting better, but his gravitational compensator had failed completely, leaving him guessing at trajectory adjustments in the variable gravity field. His scores were dropping steadily as conditions became more challenging. The alien cadets were faring even worse. Their entire approach to marksmanship was built around advanced technology and automated systems. When those systems failed, they had no backup methods to fall back on. Sector had managed to hit only 3 targets in the first hour. His quantum scope remained dark, and he was trying to use basic iron sights that he had never properly learned to operate. The Draknari military tradition emphasized technology and coordination over individual marksmanship skills. This is impossible, he declared in frustration after missing his 6th consecutive shot. No one can shoot accurately under these conditions without proper equipment. But Yuna was proving him wrong with every shot she fired. Her scores remained consistently high as the environmental conditions grew more extreme. She was adapting to each new challenge, making small adjustments to her technique and rifle position as needed. By the halfway point of the competition, the rankings had changed dramatically. Yuna was in first place by a significant margin. The alien cadets who had dominated the practice sessions were scattered throughout the middle and lower portions of the leaderboard. "How is the human maintaining accuracy?" Veltar asked during a brief rest period. His energy form was barely stable inside his containment suit. Her weapon has no advanced systems to compensate for environmental factors. That is exactly why it is working, Talon observed from his monitoring position. Advanced systems fail under extreme conditions. Basic systems continue operating regardless of environmental challenges. The final 2 hours of the competition were the most challenging yet. The atmospheric interference increased to levels that shut down all remaining electronic systems. Gravity fluctuations became more extreme, changing every few minutes. Wind patterns shifted constantly, making long-range shooting nearly impossible for most participants. Yuna continued hitting targets with methodical precision. Each shot was carefully planned and executed, taking into account all the environmental variables that the failing electronic systems could no longer handle automatically. Her rifle, modified for basic reliability rather than high-tech capability, performed flawlessly throughout the ordeal. When the competition ended, the results were undeniable. Yuna had achieved the highest accuracy rating in Academy history. Minho and June, inspired by her example and finally abandoning their dependence on technology, had managed to finish in second and third place respectively. The alien cadets stared at the final rankings in disbelief. Everything they thought they knew about military effectiveness and technological superiority had been proven wrong in the most decisive way possible. The humans, the primitive newcomers who everyone had expected to fail, had completely dominated the most challenging test the Academy could devise. The silence in the simulation bay was complete. 60 cadets stared at the final competition rankings displayed on the main screen, trying to process results that challenged everything they believed about military capability and technological advancement. Yuna Kim, first place, 94.7% accuracy rating. Minho Lee, second place, 78.3% accuracy rating. June Park, third place, 76.1% accuracy rating. The next highest score belonged to a Vex cadet who had managed only 61% accuracy. Most of the alien cadets who had dominated the practice sessions for 2 months were clustered in the bottom half of the rankings. Sector was staring at his own result with obvious disbelief. 23rd place with 43% accuracy. His quantum targeting scope, gravitational compensator, and neural interface had all failed within the first hour of competition. Without electronic assistance, his shooting had been wildly inaccurate. "This is impossible," he whispered, his forked tongue flicking nervously. "The scoring system must be malfunctioning." "The scoring system is functioning perfectly," Instructor Talon announced as he approached the group. "The results are accurate and final." Veltar's energy form was flickering weakly inside his containment suit. His natural electromagnetic abilities had been completely disrupted by the simulated atmospheric conditions, leaving him unable to target effectively. "How did primitive weapons outperform advanced galactic technology?" he demanded. Talon gestured for all the cadets to gather around him. Even in their defeat, they deserved to understand what had happened and why their assumptions had been so completely wrong. "You assumed that more advanced technology would always produce better results," Talon began. "This assumption led you to build weapons that were dependent on electronic systems and automated assistance. When those systems failed under extreme conditions, you had no backup capabilities." He moved to where Yuna was carefully cleaning her rifle, the same methodical routine she had followed after every practice session. This cadet built her weapon around reliability and basic functionality. When environmental conditions destroyed electronic systems, her rifle continued operating normally. "But surely this was an unfair test," protested Zixnil. "Real combat situations would not involve such extreme electromagnetic interference." "Real combat situations are always more extreme than training exercises," Talon replied firmly. "Enemy forces specifically target electronic systems because they know most galactic militaries are dependent on them. Hostile environments disable advanced technology regularly. Successful soldiers must be able to function when their equipment fails." The alien cadets were beginning to understand the magnitude of their miscalculation, but the complete explanation was still coming. "There is additional information about this cadet that you should know," Talon continued, looking directly at Yuna. "May I share your service record with the class?" Yuna nodded once, still focused on her rifle maintenance. "Cadet Yuna Kim served for 8 years as a sniper specialist in the Earth Defense Force," Talon announced. She participated in 14 major military campaigns across 7 different hostile environments. Her confirmed elimination count is not 237 individual targets as she stated previously. It is 237 successful missions, some involving multiple high-value targets. The numbers hit the assembled cadets like physical blows. Multiple targets per mission meant her actual kill count was significantly higher than they had realized. 14 major campaigns meant years of continuous combat experience. 8 years of specialized training meant expertise that none of them could match. Her longest confirmed elimination was achieved at a distance of 2,147 meters under adverse weather conditions with no electronic assistance, Talon continued. Her survival record includes 43 days alone in hostile territory after her unit was destroyed, during which she continued conducting reconnaissance and eliminating enemy targets. June and Minho were staring at Yuna with expressions of awe and something approaching fear. They had shared dormitory space with her for 2 months without realizing they were living with one of the most dangerous soldiers in human military history. Why did she not tell us this information? Sector asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Because human military culture values results over reputation, Talon explained. She was here to demonstrate her capabilities through performance, not through stories about past achievements. Veltar was the first to approach Yuna directly. His energy form had stabilized somewhat as the simulation bay returned to normal atmospheric conditions. I apologize for my assumptions about your species and your capabilities, he said formally. I request permission to learn from your techniques. One by one, the other alien cadets began approaching her with similar requests. The mockery and condescension of the past 2 months had been replaced by genuine respect and curiosity about human military methods. How do you aim accurately without electronic assistance? Asked Zixnil. My species relies on computational targeting algorithms for precision shooting. Practice, Yuna replied simply. Years of practice until the calculations become instinctive. What about the cloth wrapping on your barrel? Sector inquired. I thought it was primitive decoration, but Instructor Talon said it serves a functional purpose. Thermal regulation and chemical protection, Yuna explained, demonstrating how the cloth prevented heat distortion and atmospheric corrosion. Electronic thermal management systems fail in extreme conditions. Basic materials continue working. More questions followed as the alien cadets tried to understand techniques and modifications they had dismissed as primitive ignorance. Every aspect of Yuna's rifle setup had a specific purpose based on practical combat experience. The Academy will be implementing changes to its training program, Talon announced to the entire group. Human military advisors will be brought in to teach traditional marksmanship and field survival techniques. All cadets will be required to demonstrate proficiency with basic equipment before advancing to electronic enhancements. Additionally, he continued, the Galactic Defense Force has requested detailed reports on human military capabilities for integration into standard operational procedures. It appears that your species brings valuable knowledge that the galaxy has been lacking. Yuna finished cleaning her rifle and packed it carefully in her worn canvas bag. Around her, 60 alien cadets were discussing human military techniques with the same enthusiasm they had previously reserved for advanced technology. The transformation was complete. Humans were no longer seen as primitive newcomers who needed guidance from advanced species. They were recognized as dangerous predators who had mastered the art of warfare through centuries of conflict and adaptation. What will you do after graduation? Veltar asked as the cadets began filing out of the simulation bay. I have been assigned to the Galactic Defense Force Special Operations Division, Yuna replied. I will be training other species in human combat techniques. And the other humans in your class? Minho will be joining the Elite Reconnaissance Unit. June has been selected for the Advanced Tactical Analysis Division. All 3 humans had been assigned to elite positions that would have been impossible to achieve 2 months earlier. Their success had opened doors not just for themselves, but for all humans seeking military careers in galactic society. As they walked through the Academy corridors one final time, Yuna reflected on the changes that had occurred. The alien cadets who had once mocked human limitations were now eager students wanting to learn human techniques. The instructors who had questioned human readiness for advanced training were now requesting human advisors for their programs. Most importantly, The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology or natural advantages. It was adaptability, determination, and the ability to turn any challenge into an opportunity for improvement. The bag containing her rifle felt familiar and comfortable on her shoulder. Soon she would be teaching other species how to survive and fight when their advanced equipment failed them. They would learn, as she had learned years ago, that the most dangerous weapon in any conflict was a trained mind that refused to surrender. The humans had proven themselves worthy of respect in the most decisive way possible. Now they would help defend a galaxy that was finally ready to learn from Earth's long history of warfare and survival. 1 year later, the Interstellar Military Academy looked very different from the institution Yuna had first encountered. The changes were visible everywhere, from the modified training programs to the new instructors walking the corridors. Commander Yuna Kim returned to the academy not as a cadet, but as the Director of Human Combat Integration. Her worn canvas bag had been replaced by standard military equipment, but she still carried her personal rifle for demonstration purposes. The weapon that had shocked the galaxy was now displayed in training manuals across dozens of worlds. The Academy's recruitment had expanded dramatically. Human applicants no longer made up tiny minorities in each class. Instead, they were actively recruited and assigned to integrated units where they could share their knowledge with alien species while learning galactic military techniques. Yuna walked through the corridors toward Range 7, where she would be conducting another training session. Along the way, she passed displays that had been updated to include human military achievements. The Battle of New Sarajevo, where human forces had held strategic positions for 6 months using only basic equipment. The liberation of mining colony Alpha 12, where human snipers had eliminated an entire occupation force without electronic support. These displays were studied by cadets from every species in the galaxy. Human warfare techniques had become required curriculum, and human instructors were among the most respected members of the Academy faculty. At Range 7, 30 cadets were waiting for the afternoon training session. Unlike the classes from her cadet days, this group was deliberately mixed. Draknari, Vex, Ethereal, and human cadets worked together in integrated teams, learning to combine their species' natural advantages with human tactical knowledge. Today we will practice equipment failure scenarios, Yuna announced to the assembled cadets. Your electronic systems will be disabled at random intervals during the exercise. You must maintain combat effectiveness using only basic techniques. The alien cadets no longer groaned or complained about these exercises. They had learned through bitter experience that electronic systems failed regularly in real combat situations. Soldiers who could not function without technological assistance were liabilities to their units. Cadet Hana Lim, one of the new human arrivals, was working with a Draknari partner named Tekmor. The two had developed an effective shooting team where Hana provided precision targeting, while Tekmor handled rapid-fire suppression. Their cooperation would have been impossible under the old system where species trained separately. Instructor Kim called Cadet Sujin from Position 15. She was struggling with the modified rifle techniques that were now standard curriculum. How do you maintain accuracy when gravity keeps changing? Feel the weapon's balance, Yuna replied, moving to demonstrate the proper stance. Your body learns to compensate automatically if you practice enough. Electronic systems calculate the adjustments, but your muscles and reflexes can make the same corrections faster. At Position 20, a Vex cadet named Tiknal was working with equipment that looked very similar to the setup Yuna had used during her final competition. Cloth barrel wrapping, modified stock position, iron sights instead of electronic optics. The modifications that had once seemed primitive were now considered advanced technique. The human methods require much more practice than electronic assistance, Tiknal observed as he adjusted his cloth wrapping. But they work in conditions where our traditional technology fails completely. That's the point, Yuna agreed. Technology should enhance your abilities, not replace them. When the enhancement fails, you still need the underlying skills. The practice session continued for 2 hours, with cadets rotating through different environmental challenges. Electronic interference, variable gravity, extreme weather conditions, and equipment failures were all part of the standard curriculum now. The Academy had learned that soldiers who could only fight under ideal conditions were not truly prepared for real warfare. During a break between exercises, Former Cadet Veltar approached Yuna's position. He was now Lieutenant Veltar, serving as an instructor in the Academy's new Adaptive Combat Division. His energy form flickered with what she had learned to recognize as respectful acknowledgement. "The integration program is exceeding all expectations," he reported. "Our graduates are performing significantly better in field assignments than previous classes. The combination of human techniques with galactic technology is proving very effective." "Any problems with species cooperation?" Yuna asked. The early integration attempts had faced resistance from some traditional military units who preferred to work within their own species groups. "Less each month," Veltar replied. "Combat effectiveness speaks for itself. Units with human-trained soldiers consistently outperform traditional formations in field exercises." This was the real measure of success for the integration program. Academic scores and training results were important, but real military effectiveness was determined in actual combat situations. Human techniques were proving valuable not because they were exotic or different, but because they worked. "Commander Kim," called a familiar voice from across the range. Yuna turned to see June Park approaching, now wearing the insignia of a captain in the Galactic Defense Force Advanced Tactical Analysis Division. His nervous energy had been replaced by confident competence. "June," she acknowledged with a slight smile. "How is the new assignment?" "Challenging but rewarding," he replied. "We are developing integrated tactical doctrines that combine human adaptability with alien technological advantages." The results are impressive. Behind him walked Minho Lee, now a major in the elite reconnaissance unit. His broad frame carried the easy confidence of someone who had found his proper place in the military hierarchy. "The 3 humans from Class 67, Veltar observed. "Your success changed everything for your species in galactic society." It was true, though Yuna had not intended to spark such widespread changes when she first arrived at the Academy. She had simply wanted to demonstrate that humans could contribute meaningfully to galactic defense efforts. "The changes were necessary," she replied. "The galaxy faces threats that require all available resources and knowledge. Humans bring unique perspectives that complement existing capabilities. This was becoming increasingly important as new challenges emerged on the galactic frontier. Unknown hostile forces were probing the edges of civilized space, using tactics that confused traditional military responses. Human adaptability and improvisation had proven crucial in several recent engagements. "Speaking of threats," Minho said, his expression becoming more serious, "have you been briefed on the Outer Rim situation?" Yuna nodded. Recent intelligence reports described attacks by unidentified forces using unconventional warfare methods. Electronic warfare, environmental manipulation, and asymmetric tactics that were designed to neutralize the technological advantages that most galactic species relied upon. "It sounds like they studied our weaknesses carefully," June observed. "Traditional galactic military doctrine is not effective against enemies who specifically target our technological dependencies. Which is why human techniques are becoming more important," Yuna replied. "Soldiers who can fight effectively without electronic support are exactly what we need for these new conflicts." The afternoon training session resumed, but now the exercises took on additional urgency. The cadets were not just learning alternative techniques for academic purposes. They were preparing for real conflicts where these skills might mean the difference between victory and defeat. As Yuna watched the mixed species teams working together, she felt a sense of satisfaction that went beyond personal achievement. The mockery and dismissal she had faced during her cadet days had been transformed into respect and cooperation. More importantly, the galaxy was becoming stronger and more adaptable because of the integration. Her canvas bag sat beside her position, containing the same rifle that had started this transformation. The weapon looked ordinary compared to the advanced systems around it, but appearance was often misleading. Sometimes the most powerful tools were the ones that looked simple. The Academy's evening announcement echoed across the ranges, calling cadets to their next scheduled activities. As the training session ended, Yuna reflected on how much had changed since her arrival. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about assumptions and prejudice. Advanced technology did not automatically mean superior capability. Ancient techniques were not necessarily obsolete methods. And sometimes the most valuable knowledge came from the most unexpected sources. The displays in the corridor now showed human battles alongside the famous conflicts of other species. Future cadets would learn about Earth's military history as part of their standard education. Human instructors would teach techniques that had been developed through centuries of warfare and survival. Most importantly, the rigid boundaries between species had begun to blur in military units across the galaxy. Draknari soldiers learned human patience and precision. Vex engineers incorporated human adaptability into their designs. Ethereal forces adopted human tactical flexibility. The integration was creating something new and more powerful than any single species could achieve alone. And at the center of this transformation was a simple truth that